Jeff Crammond, retro superstar. All this and more coming up on This Week in Retro.
High-resolution color graphics.
This land of high technology.
The revolution in technology that made the information age possible.
Those kids are not afraid of computers.
Humpback is back. Stunt Car Racer is back. And now it's for Windows and Linux.
New life for old browsers. We have some good news and some bad news for those of you still surfing the net on your television like it's 1999.
And cable TV relics restored. Sega Channel is back from the dead.
And Commodore 64 Ultimate updates, along with memorials for some industry icons, coming up on this week's show for the week of Saturday, the 10th of January, 2026. Oof.
Up-to-date news for out-of-date tech. Far out. Welcome back, guys. How you going?
The inexorable march of time, Chris.
Yes.
Coping with the inexorable march of time over here.
2026. Please stop. Stop doing this to us. Did you have a good break?
Delighted. I'm delighted to see on the music stand 2 important, very old SSI games, Questron 2 and Fantasy. I've been thinking about those because I've got my C64U and I want to play some old RPGs, and I have those behind me. Actually, I've got Questron 2 out in front of it just now because I'm thinking about playing that in particular. So I'm delighted to see those, Jason. Have you played them?
I played Fantasy a lot more than the Questron games. Fantasy I spent a lot of time with, and didn't get quite as deep into Fantasy 2. Questron I've sampled a little bit of each of the 2 games.
Have you even heard of them, Chris?
Not at all. Don't know. Haven't got a clue what you're talking about. But they look great on the music stand, so that's awesome.
Thanks.
All I've got in the background is I'm just showing off I know it's a distant memory now, but my Christmas presents. Transformers, Tron Legacy soundtrack on vinyl in the translucent.
Oh, lovely.
That's a beautiful.
Lovely.
And a couple of nice horror movies. So yeah, very pleased. And I should have been wearing it. Also got an Amiga Addict t-shirt. So,
I've got an appropriate t-shirt on today.
Oh, Microprose.
More of that later. There's nothing in your TV, Chris. Is that you're going to turn it on later on? Or just
no, because do you remember it gets strobes for people? And being a migraine sufferer, I'm
one person was unhappy.
Turning it off. Yeah. Well, one person commented, and generally that means more people weren't happy. And I'm a migraine sufferer, so I'm keen for if there's anything that's distracting in the background that's going to cause you issues, I will happily turn it off. But in the Christmas episode, it was on and it worked, which confirms my suspicion. It's the lights in the room flicker at a different frequency to the TV, and the camera adjusts itself to the lights. So with the lights off, it works. But anyway, shall we get on with the show? Enough about my room lighting. Let's get on with the show.
Welcome back to the new year, people.
Yes, where we discuss lighting on an audio podcast. Little ramp, stepping stones, humpback, big ramp, ski jump, drawbridge, high jump, roller coaster. Some of you may assume I was just having a stroke, but the majority of you, I think, would know that those are all track names from one of the most iconic driving games ever, Stunt Car Racer by Jeff Crammond and published by Microstyle in 1989. I played it to bits on the Amiga, mainly against my mate Steve. Hi, Steve. Via a massive 12-meter long RS-232 cable that we made.
12 meters?
12 meters. Yeah. So basically, one session, we did this with F-16 Combat Pilot and Stunt Car Racer. I was downstairs. He was downstairs in my parents' lounge, and I was upstairs in the bedroom, and we dangled the cable down over the banister, and we were playing literally 2 separate floors.
That's incredible.
There's no screen cheating, mate, when you're doing that. You got to do it properly. Oh, it was great. But I also played lots going through the solo league with my imaginatively named driver profile, Mad Max. I'm sure I'm the...
What a premonition.
I know. Moved to Australia. I need to buy an XB Falcon. I'm sure no other players in the entire world were using such an awesome name as Mad Max. I'm sure I'm the only person that thought to use that. If you've not played it, just think about throwing a couple of cars on a roller coaster ride with no safety barriers, throw in some impossible jumps and turns, and then let the cars race it out. The physics for the time were really impressive, and there's a damage model, so the more harshly you treat the car, the more chance it's going to fall into a heap before you finish the race. To sum up Stunt Car Racer in a single word, fun. And on every system, and it was out on the Amiga, the ST, which it ran slightly faster on. The C64, the CPC, the Spectrum, and even DOS PCs could just about handle it. And it remains a go-to game of choice for me on the Amiga and pretty much everyone at any Amiga meet anywhere in the world. It just holds up. And to that point, Colony Activist has made us aware that coder Omen Lab, that's how I'm pronouncing that, on GitHub, has made a remake for modern PCs, and it's supported on Windows and on Linux. Well, he's working on it anyway, but what he's done so far is very playable. It seems to be based on the Amiga version, as it's got the Paula sound effects, and you're going to love this, Dave. It even maintains the original full stereo separation.
Why?
Perfect.
Why?
Because that's how it should be, Dave. Moving on. In fact, while other attempts have been made to remake Stunt Car Racer with modern graphics and physics, that has been done, but they never seem to get completed. And also, that's not what this one is going for. It's just OG Stunt Car Racer running smooth as heck on a modern PC. Thoughts, guys? And also, in this premise, as we unpack it, what game from your past would you like to see have a modern but OG remake?
Yeah, I like that we're 3 minutes into the new year and we've confirmed that this, in fact, is still a racing game podcast. Nothing has changed.
Do you not
Everything's
like
exactly
racing
where you
games
left
at
it.
all, Jason?
No, we never
Yes.
talk about racing games on the show.
Do you
ever.
not like them, though? What's your favourite racing game?
I do like Stunt Car Racer, and I think it is one of those, because it was interesting, Chris, when you said, that you assume the majority of people know about it. I'm not sure it was ever legitimately sold in North America.
Wow.
Really?
I'm not. I really don't think so.
Wow.
You guys missed out.
Well, some of us got hold of it anyway, but I mostly played the C64 version, which is a slog, and it does benefit from accelerators if you
Still
if you have
good,
access to them. It was still lots of fun. It just you knew that it's like, this is not the way that the world could be. That has that feel of like there's something better waiting down the line for you.
Could we, just for Jason, could we create a racing game that's actually a text adventure? Right.
You joke. I'm sure that's actually been worked on.
Might have done.
I was struggling with your question about like what I'd like to see. A still OG but still modern remake of. Project Firestart would probably be high on that list. I know there's been some attempts to do like a first person version of it, but I think that maybe something that is still in the old school third person view might be a lot of fun. And I would really love to see somebody do something more with the concept of Below the Root, which was a very pioneering sort of platformer adventure style game. I don't know, but yeah, very cool to see that Stunt Car Racer is getting some love.
What about, I've just thought of the games I hadn't thought about from Onaz. What about the Eidolon and Rescue and Fractalus? They might be good ones for it.
Rescue on
The Eidolon with a modern engine, I think could be really pretty. Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoy Stunt Car Racer, despite the frame rate, and that was me getting the best of it, getting the best of the ports on the ST. Even then, the frame rate wasn't what it could be. And these days, I struggle with the frame rates that we thought were acceptable. Things like X-Wing and Doom and Ultima and so on, Ultima Underworld and so on. There's frame rates on them back in the 90s. I could have got on with half of the frame rate that we actually got. But these days, I need more. But it's great with PC games. But when we go back to things like Driller or Stunt Car Racer and so on, it's not so easy. When they're on 16-bit or 8-bit machines, it's not so easy to accelerate them. And I watched a C64U video, a C64 Ultimate video, 2-3 days ago, where someone was running the accelerated option on the C64U, and he happened to run Stunt Car Racer. And it looked great until I realised, hang on, it's not just the frame rate that he's speeding up, it's the whole game. And then it becomes even more difficult to play.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's... I know that for the Amiga, certainly, and for some ST games, people have fixed and they've uncoupled the speed of the game from the frame rate so you can play the game at the normal speed with a faster frame rate, and that's fantastic. It still feels like the original game, but it's really buttery smooth, and I'm delighted this is happening for Stunt Car Racer. As for what I'd like to get done this way, I mean, I keep thinking back to 3D games because they seem to be the best candidate for it. So things like the Mercenary series, Ultima Underworld, but I think if I was to choose one, it would be the Freescape games. So I'd like a modern Freescape engine that ran the Freescape games like Driller and Darkside and Castle Master and Total Eclipse. The frame rate in those in 8-bit machines was absolutely abysmal. I mean, absolutely comically bad. But we pushed on with it because it was what we had. And you'd never got the chance to be in a 3D world like that unless you said, okay, I'll take 1.5 frames a second.
I'm actually surprised that nobody's done that now that you mention it, because I mean, those worlds are, I think they're fairly well documented. Like that format is pretty well picked apart. So,
well, plus they were available. They were available on PC as well, were they? I know the
yes, they were.
3D
everything we've mentioned was available on PC.
The whole Freescape thing.
Yeah, but the stunt car racing, I don't think was very good in the PC.
Yeah, but like the Driller or those Freescape games, in a modern engine. I'd be surprised that happened.
With texture maps thrown in and everything. I mean, I played Driller and Dark Side on the Spectrum, so the frame rate issues were even bigger. But again, like you say, Dave, that was part of the game. It was like, I'm trying to get away from that stupid laser shooting at me, and I can't run fast enough because the computer code won't keep up. And that was half the game.
Castle Master.
Actually, interesting. I was doing some experimentation with my A1200, seeing what A500 games were compatible with it off the original discs. But I did try Stunt Car Racer. It seemed to run absolutely fine, as in smoother, not faster. But because my disc, well, wait for it, because my original disc is dirty, I was using a cracked ADF version written to disc. So maybe that has had an alteration. I don't know. But that's how it seemed to play. It seemed to play absolutely fine.
One of the fantastic things about playing games on an Amiga these days is the WHD load versions are the best version of the game you could hope to play. And I've not heard of any game where you should stay away from the WHD load. Go for that one. That's the one to play. It's had all the fixes you would want played, and it makes it the best way to do it, as long as your Amiga's got enough memory.
It's true until it's not, and I think this is just my Christmas curse. Every game I ever want to play over Christmas related games, they're either not on the hard drive image that that came with the A1200 that I've got, or those particular games are corrupt. So Batman, for example, I couldn't play. That image is corrupt. Home Alone isn't even on the hard drive, probably because the previous owner thought, well, that's crap, so we'll just delete that, and so on and so forth. So yeah, there we go.
I do want to say about Stunt Car Racer, the reason why I think it's still got the appeal is, even though it's a league system where you're trying to ultimately win, you can still have fun going in and just having one race at the start of the season. Just one race is fun to do. You don't have to commit to a big long game. You can go in for 5 minutes and have a bit of fun. I love Stunt Car Racer.
We should have a link up, Dave.
How many meters?
How many meters? Well, quite a few meters. Do you know, actually, I think that's the missing point in emulation development is these RS-232 games need to be made so that we can play them across the internet. That, I think, would finish everything. The world
Amiga
would be
Live.
perfect. We'd have... Oh, is that a thing?
Yeah.
Does it work?
Yeah.
Oh, so it's been done. I just didn't know about it. Anyway, moving on. Like I said, this seems to still be in development. Some modern polish has been added, but it's thankfully limited to things like extra 3D objects in the background, which is great. And the game feels both original and yet even better to play. And all the tracks I listed at the start of this story are already available to play. But some things don't quite handle quite right, and there's no link up that I can tell anyway, and there's no league progression that I could work out. And also, the AI doesn't just cheat. It seems to, so the other racer I'm talking about here, doesn't just cheat. It seems to literally teleport from being high up in the air over a jump to suddenly being perfectly on the track, taking a corner at high speed, as seen on a great video by the new Retro Show, which we'll link to in the notes. So, yep, there's clearly work to be done, but that shouldn't detract from how awesome it is already. This is how a remake should be done. The same, but different, but still the same. We are sponsored this week, thank you very much, by PCBWay. Jason, I believe you've been looking at some of their projects.
Yes, I have been looking at some of the shared projects available on PCBWay. These are ones that tend to be ready to go, or you can make your own enhancements and share those back into the community as well. And quite a few easy ones right at the top of the list that are of widespread interest. There's this cool, if you remember the Zonox double ender cartridges for the Atari 2600, well, you can make your very own on PCBWay. It's called the 2x4KB cartridge. So it has the card edge on both sides, but shares a single ROM. Those are available as a shared project now. Also caught my eye here, the Commodore 64 Ice Machine cartridge. If you are familiar with the C64 and you know about freezer cartridges, those were enhancements that you could add in, hit a button, and you would freeze the action in the machine, and it would switch to a separate program. So you might be able to edit sprites or go into a monitor, make some changes, and either save the image out or in some cases resume from where you left off. Apparently, this was a ROM that had been published in a magazine based on the commercial Final Cartridge 2. And so you can actually just order the cart now on PCBWay. Dave, did you have something?
How can you publish a ROM in a magazine?
I mean, as an assembly
the biggest
listing, I guess.
type in
Yeah, and you, well, I mean, if it's a 4K or an 8K ROM,
okay, I guess, yeah,
you can fill some pages with that, and a tiny vending machine based on an ESP32. This is called the MDB ESP32 Tiny Vending Machine. So supports the multi-drop bus protocol for communication with standard vending peripherals, coin changers, bill validators, cashless payment systems. So if you want to roll your own vending machine in your nerdy workshop, they've got you covered on PCBWay.
Brilliant. Thank you for sponsoring us, PCBWay.
So one of the weirdly persistent themes around the rise of personal computing, and by the way, with this being 2026, we can now say we are in the 6th decade of personal computing, in case you weren't feeling old enough this morning. So every time there's a cool new use for a personal computer which catches on or even shows a lot of potential, it seemed like there was an immediate and concerted effort to detach that experience from the world of the computer and put it somewhere else. So maybe they try to come up with a way to put it in a car or on your wrist or in a kiosk or some other public terminal. You get the idea. So there were a lot of reasons to do this kind of thing, particularly the idea that the computer, even as prices were falling and adoption was climbing, the computer experience simply wasn't nearly as universal as some other common household appliances. The winning strategy eventually for all of this becomes the smartphone once it becomes practical to put supercomputing power in your pocket for a modest upfront charge, and then it's practical to connect you to an always-on data network for a nominal monthly fee. But before we get to smartphone tech, the television was the obvious alternative for a task that otherwise was going to be the domain of the personal computer. Reasoning being, okay, virtually everybody has a TV, and it's a more natural part of more people's everyday experience. You don't go to a special room, or there's not a desk tucked away in a corner. Then you turn a bunch of things on and do a task. By the way, when did you guys start leaving your computers on full time? Because even just this idea that you've turned the computer on is an old school concept.
Oh, as soon as we moved away from AT power supplies onto ATX power supplies,
okay,
I stopped shutting it down, and I haven't shut I shut my Windows computer down every few weeks.
Sure.
I even remember leaving on the Atari ST when I was playing Dungeon Master with the auto fire on the kick button to practice skills.
Are you serious?
Okay, so you were grinding Dungeon Master, Chris?
Do you know what? I think it was probably around Windows 10. I don't think it was before that. And that's possibly because I went through in XP, I would shut those down. Windows 7, I would shut those down. And then in Windows 8 and 8.1, I went through a laptop period. And of course, generally you shut a laptop down. But then my next desktop was a Windows 10 machine. So I think that was it. And that's when I basically stopped. I just leave them on. This PC that I've got here, I leave on. But my MacBook, I shut that down. Okay. But that's partially because I want to believe that the battery will last 12 months. It doesn't quite.
I should point out that when you move from AT to ATX power supplies, remember in Windows 95, you would get that thing, it is now safe to turn off computer. That was on an AT power supply, I think. And we moved to ATX, the computer could control the power supply.
Right.
So that's when you had power saving and so on. And that's when it became all of a sudden possible just let it sleep and let it do its own thing.
Okay.
I remember before that, you'd have the sleep button, but it would never work properly. Like even in the Windows 98 days. And you put it into sleep and then you press wake and nothing would happen.
For me, it was more of an outgrowth of having always on broadband. And I don't know if I've told the story on the show before. My very first DSL provider, I was treating everything like I treated dial-up, plug it in and connect when I wanted to connect. shut everything down when I was done. And this was in the early days of this company. They actually called me and said, hey, it was like on a Sunday afternoon, like, is everything okay with your service? And I'm like, yeah, it's fine. Why? And they said, well, because it's showing up as an outage right now. So can you, I'm like, oh, well, yeah, just disconnect it. Like, well, please don't do that because it shows up on our screen as it being down. I'm like, oh, okay. So once I was leaving the DSL modem on all the time, I'm like, all right, I was leaving the computer on. Anyway. So yeah, we're way past that. But the TV was at the heart of many, if not most, family homes in the late 20th century. And so if you want to promote a product or service or a new tech or sell your wares through a new platform, why not put it around the TV? And that just turns into the line of reasoning, which led to the fixation with set-top boxes in the 1990s and the dogged attempts to build a web browser that would work on a television, or at least work well enough on a television to direct people to do some business and keep their internet service provider monthly charges flowing, as these set-top box devices tended to be built around a dial-up connection that required a monthly or annual service charge. And 2 of these web browsing set-top box relics made it into the news over the past couple of weeks. And of course, this is still a racing game podcast, and this is still a podcast driven by Pajako6502. He was on top of both of these stories because even when we take a break, he does not. The first story was based on a Hackaday report about WebTV, which was the brand name that kind of became the catch-all for this maybe a browser on a television can work genre. WebTV started out as a standalone company, but it was quickly snapped up by Microsoft back when Microsoft printed money as a desktop operating system and applications company. And all but a couple of the classic WebTV models were dial-up modem based, and all of them were rendered inert when Microsoft discontinued what it ultimately called the MSN TV service in 2013, unless you head over to the WebTV Redialed project for the resources that you need to get your ancient standard definition set-top box connecting to, well, definitely not the entire World Wide Web, but at least a subset. There are ways to connect if you still have a voice over IP gadget at home, but an increasingly popular way to do this is to build a DreamPi dial-up server, which is designed for Raspberry Pi devices. DreamPi is a little tricky to build because you may need to hack some DC power into the phone line that's connected to it to make everything work correctly. And your reward for doing all this is, well, it's getting to use a WebTV again. Back in the day, the biggest enemy of experience on this thing might have been, frames, or it may have been the rise of Flash. Nowadays, most major websites are really just like a small HTML and style sheet wrapper around a very large custom binary. So there's a whole lot more that isn't going to work. But if you're committed to the bit, you can at least try. Did you guys ever play around with any of these dedicated set-top boxes, or even use like the browser capability in the services menu and a lot of connected Blu-ray players that are, of more recent vintage?
I actually find connected Blu-ray players really annoying because it just holds them up unnecessarily. Yeah, well, I've not had much luck with them. But anyway, actually, probably the closest I've been, so one of our friends, we never had Sky in the UK, but we knew some people that did. And Sky went through a period of their set-top box had, I don't know if you remember this, Dave, but it was the whole thing about press the red button to be watching something. And if you want more information, press the red button, and it would give you access to further information or further sub-programs or whatever. And also they started doing a thing with like game services. So I remember literally playing battleships on their Sky set-top box. It was horrendous. It was a horrible experience, but it could do it. As for I can't really relate other than, the TV apps that you get on the PS3 and PS4 would be the closest thing I can think of.
That definitely qualifies.
Yeah. And I guess those have kind of slid into what you now expect out of a smart TV. So,
yeah. Dave?
I'll go into it a bit later, but I'd rather put a pair of boxing gloves on and put Vaseline in my glasses and sit down in front of a PC. I'd probably still get on better than I would fighting through the menus with a remote control to try and do something on the web.
Yeah, I remember because I have a couple of Sony Blu-ray players, and they would like peel off different apps over time. Like, this one doesn't work, this one doesn't work anymore. And I think they eventually said, like, yeah, the browser's not going to work anymore, guys. Sorry, we're not even. And I'm like, it wasn't something I would use on purpose. And I'm like, oh, well, they're giving up on that. That's kind of sad, and also sort of poignant that somebody at Sony still cares to send these firmware updates to tell you that you can't have it. I will note that there are some services that still work on some of the. I've got a Samsung Blu-ray player in my kitchen that. I used to play Pandora sometimes, and you can tell that that's just based on the Opera browser that's built into the player, because every once in a while there's a glitch in a page or image loading that kind of reveals the Opera browser behind the scenes. And so that's still working. And if you'd wondered from the name whether the DreamPie gadget was designed for the Dreamcast, which of course is the iconic but last gasp console from Sega, which shipped with a modem in every box, well, of course it was. DreamPie was spun up to help keep those old consoles connected to the various servers that still connect supported games designed for Dreamcast, as well as web browsers that you could get from Sega that they branded as Planet Web. There's a Tom's Hardware article that Pajaco pointed us to, which caused a little bit of confusion at first with its overblown headline that, quote, Google killed the 25-year-old Sega Dreamcast Planet Web 3.0 web browser this week. Big G's services no longer respond to this quarter-century-old software. Now, when I read that, I thought, aha, okay, the then-fledgling Google had made a deal with the then-spluttering Sega to provide proxy services for Planet Web, and somebody at Google remembered that they were still running and shut them off. It is not quite that dramatic. What has happened is that the Google search engine, even in what passes for its most plain Jane state these days, cannot be rendered by Planet Web any longer, and to say nothing of any Google applications like Gmail or Docs or anything like that. So your bookmarks or direct entry URLs or whatever, those will still work on Planet Web, or at least won't work any worse than they did before Google stopped honoring the ancient Planet Web requests. But this, honestly, it does hurt discoverability somewhat. The Tom's Hardware article does point to a stripped-down search engine aggregator called frogfind.de, which it says will still speak with Planet Web. And you can find services out there like ProtoWeb, which help old-school devices access old-school web experiences. So, we talked about games that we wish got a redress. Are there any shuttered services out there that you guys wish got half as much love as these efforts to keep WebTV and Dreamcast Planet Web browsers online?
No, I'm the very opposite on the spectrum of people who these are designed for. All these systems, and you did say it yourself at the start, Jason, they're designed for people who don't want to sit down in front of a computer. I'm always sitting down in front of a computer. This is the way I want to do things. I don't want to do it on a DVD player. I don't want to do it on my TV. I don't want to do it on an Amstrad emailer. I don't want to do it on my phone even. Even doing something on my phone, I won't buy anything on my phone. I'll sit down in front of a computer and do it properly. That's just because that's what I'm used to.
Have you never eBayed on the toilet?
No. Oh. Well, I've eBayed. I've looked at eBay, but I never buy on my phone. I always buy on the computer.
Oh, fair enough.
I don't trust. I just feel as if it's not done properly. And so I'm the exact opposite person this is all to appeal to. This was all designed of how can we bring all these modern computing, internet things of the late 90s to people who won't use a computer, and that wasn't me. So no, the only thing I kind of miss is if you remember back to dial-up times, particularly in the UK, or if you had some kind of limitation, maybe in the US you had a certain number of hours of dial-up you got. And I missed the way that you would connect to the internet, you would send and receive your emails, you would connect to Usenet, and you would grab the articles you'd marked and then send the replies you had, and you'd be on and back off in a couple of minutes, and then you'd be back offline again to take the time to look through things, rather than the way that we're now when we're permanently online. And I'm not saying I want to go back to there, but I miss the aspect of having windows of being online and then the rest of it. Whereas just now, you can be in a chat in Discord or on WhatsApp or wherever, and before you know it, you're sitting for hours and wasting the time, whereas before it seemed to be a bit better.
Yeah, I'm gonna list an obscure one, so it's more gaming related, but it's still an online service. GameSpy, which was from 1999 until 2013. And I mean, in the early days, it was kind of the only way to find somebody else playing the same game you wanted to play, right? Because the games were really built around LAN play. And it was a way of finding an existing server. So I guess, does it need resurrecting? No, because games have their own built-in way of finding other servers and stuff. But they also don't, because some of the game, if it's an old game, then the servers disappear and there's no way of finding somebody else that still wants to play, original Unreal Tournament, for example, or whatever. And also GameSpy in the early 2000s went through a bit of a naughty usage. And there was a bit of middleware, and I can't remember the name of it. I knew this would come up sometime. But basically, if you wanted to play, say, I think it was Halo 3 on the Xbox 360 against somebody else, but you weren't paying for Xbox Live, you could actually use this other piece of software that basically you installed on your PC, and it talked between the Xbox 360 and GameSpy, and you used GameSpy to find the Halo game online, right? So as far as your Xbox 360 was concerned, you were playing a local LAN game, and GameSpy was finding your competitors, and it worked perfectly. It was great. So it had sort of uses like that, sort of these sort of underground uses. I loved it as a service. I thought it was great.
Okay. Yeah, GameSpy is an interesting example. I mean, a modern equivalent, but it's not the same type of discoverability would be like, having a friends list in Steam or trying to find people through a Steam lobby or something like that. But it is different. So, now that even entry-level devices that you can buy that, connect to any sort of web browser today are sporting, 4 gigs of RAM as a minimum, any effort to keep websites floating to these, 32-bit home appliances that have memory capacities measured in, single or double-digit megabytes is very welcome. So, and if you are running a DreamPi, by the way, or just check us out on YouTube every week via one of those aging Blu-ray players or a PS3 that's still chugging along, let us know in the comments. Want to welcome some new patrons to the show this week. Bannon joined, as well as Evil Edwin, and Bannon took advantage of our new annual subscription option, and he was joined by Stephen P. and 3 Pauls. So there's a lesson here from turning that feature on, which is that Pauls love a volume discount. So thank you, Pauls. Thank you, Bannon, Evil Edwin, and Stephen for joining up and sticking with us.
If you do want to join the official Twirlers and become a patron, then go to Will you stop saying www? I can't do it. I belong with those old people trying to use the Amstrad emailer in 1998. No, if you want to become a patron, go to patreon.com/thisweekinretro. Don't need any W's. Thank you for your support.
And on to news in brief. Kefka Floyd shared the news that Stuart Chaffee, the longtime producer and host of the weekly Computer Chronicles television show, passed away just after Christmas. An extensive obituary was posted on the computerchronicles.blog site, and it documents Chaffee's extensive accomplishments in media and education, as if practically inventing the format that This Week in Retro still uses today wasn't enough. When I joined the show last year, I had hoped that we would be able to invite Stuart to join us, but it seems that after he had major back surgery in 2024, he disappeared from public view. I encourage you to listen to his 2017 interview on the Floppy Days podcast. That's episode 78, which recounts his work on Computer Chronicles and the later NetCafe program from the late 1990s and early 2000s. Chaffee was 87 years old.
There are lots of submissions in the subreddit about the Commodore 64 Ultimate. Mine arrived just after we recorded the last show last year. I am delighted with it. And the answer to the one big question I had is yes, it does feel like I'm using a real Commodore 64. And that was the one thing I was wondering, would it feel right? And it does feel right. They've knocked it out the park with what the package is. It looks great. They're a great big heavy ring-bound manual. Really impressed with it. And I plugged it straight into my 1701 Commodore CRT monitor. It worked first time. It looks fantastic. No jail bars, nothing. It looks absolutely brilliant. And I've been watching some fantastic videos about it. And I'm excited to be part of the first wave of these. Not quite the first wave, because people have had them, the boards certainly, for a while. But the first wave of people getting the whole unit from Commodore. The top post about it was from Terrible Insurance 879 with some great photos of it, which Duncan will probably have up on the screen.
And I did order one just before the new year ticked around and the prices changed or whatever, which means if you're wondering when they're going to announce whatever their next project is, based on the experience that I had with the Ultimate board last year, the answer is 2 weeks after I get my Commodore 64 Ultimate.
Did you get yours in time for Christmas, Dave?
Yes, I did. Yeah, just a few days before Christmas. Yeah,
nice flex.
Obviously, they were trying so hard to get them out for Christmas. I think they wanted to have that kind of Christmas present vibe going on and get more people to buy them. So they've done really well. I'm really impressed with them. I'll try and get a couple of links in to Duncan for people. There's a particular video I watched yesterday that's quite it's someone talking about the unit itself and nothing else and going into a bit of detail. I thought it was a really good video if you want to find out more about it. So I'll get Duncan to add that to the show notes.
More sad news, though. Ben from Byte Delight, a Spectrum shop, has passed. Ben put huge amounts of effort into things he created and will be sorely missed by the Spectrum community. Thank you, Starquake64, for letting us know.
And Indigo Prime links us to a blog from Datagooby, called Amiga Desktops Worth Seeing. It's a wide variety of desktops that you might have seen from throughout the Amiga's life.
And more Jeff Crammond news. The new incarnation of Microprose is bringing back his favourite F1. His favourite? I guess they are his favourite.
Is it your favourite?
It's not my favourite. I'm my favourite stunt car racer. Or actually, my favourite Jeff Crammond game might not have been mentioned yet today. His famous F1 GP games. And they say, together we are bringing back his groundbreaking racing game engine in a re-release of the original game technology, enhanced with updates, new tools, and Steam Workshop support through the upcoming Jeff Crammond Racing Series. GCR1, GCR2, GCR3, and GCR4, scheduled to release in 2026. So thanks, Good Punk 2. His F1 GP games were seminal, and it's fantastic to hear them coming back. And it looks as if it's not just going to be some modern Unity or whatever based engine with the name slapped on it. It's going to be modern recreations of it that are true to it in the same way that Chris was talking about with the other Jeff Crammond game today, Stunt Car Racer. So I'm excited to see what happens there.
That's cool. I can still identify some F1 tracks if I see a glimpse on the TV by my knowledge of the corners from that game. It's fantastic. I'm not even joking. I love it. And because you've not heard enough of Jeff, Mark Moxon has published a commented disassembly of the BBC Micro version of The Sentinel, which was Jeff's 3D unique puzzle game. Thanks to none other than Jason himself for that. Thank you, Jason.
Yeah.
Are you a fan of The Sentinel, Jason?
So I think it's a fine game. I think it's fine. I do like to use these opportunities to kind of chide the unnecessarily breathless coverage of that game at the time, particularly but not limited to Zap64 saying, oh, it's unscorable. It's so amazing. We can't. Yes, you could. You could totally put a score on the game. Come on.
Because it came on. It was a packing game. Well, it came on the A500 Mini, right? And I think that's the only time I've played it. And I just found it confusing as heck, and I turned it off.
It was one of these games that,
you need the docs. You need to spend time with it.
Yeah,
if
you need the docs.
If you got it, I got it in the Amstrad CPC, and if you got it back in the day, you would put the time into looking into it. These days, you want an instant grab. You want something that grabs your attention right away, and that's not there. The hook isn't there. But it's a fantastic game, and there was nothing. I hadn't played anything like it, so I completely disagree. It's unscorable. It was fairly scorable.
Was that your favorite Crammond game then, Dave?
No.
Yet to be
either
determined.
that or Stunt Car Racer. I'm not quite sure. Not F1 GP. I'm not really into racing games.
What are we doing on this show then?
I know. This is the legacy
Sacked.
of Neil and Chris together would turn this into a racing game show.
If you'd like to take up a position of presenter on This Week in Retro, please write to us on...
with your best lap time.
That's all we want to know.
There'll be qualifying rounds, yes.
Pole position arcade and Chase HQ. That's the peak.
And they should do that.
Actually.
Yes. But they should do that at reddit.com/r/thisweekinretro to submit their qualifying laps, submit stories, upvote, downvote, comment, all that good stuff.
These days, if you want a simple life gaming, then you might have a PlayStation Plus or an Xbox Game Pass. You'll have to choose which tier you're on, of course, and you'll have to buy the console, but that gives you a wide array of games to play, rotating in and out over time. And as, of course, the nature of things in the modern world, they've made it more complicated, and there's now different tiers, and you can end up paying more to get things off the plan. But the basic idea is there, sort of a Netflix for games.
So, well, we'll see if this is in the video version for those on audio. Chris was making his sour, shaking his head face. But let's just rewind a bit, because we were just talking about the Xbox 360, where you had to pay a monthly fee just for the privilege of connecting. You didn't get any games. You just had to pay to be part, unless you were doing the GameSpy workaround. You were very cool, Chris.
Or unless you go in, screw this, I'm jumping to PS3, which at the time you didn't have to do that, right?
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But just think about we've moved in 20 years from you may or may not be paying for the privilege just of connecting to now that same kind of fee. Here, we'll just give you a bunch of games. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, they want your money every month.
Sure. Turns out it's a good model. Patreon.com/This Week in Retro.
If you're happy, if you're happy to do it, then it's fine. And loads of people, millions of people are happy to take these subscriptions out because it does make it simple. And they'll talk about, they'll play a game if it's on the subscription and they won't play if it's not. And that's enough for them. And there is not a thing wrong with that. It's a simple life. It is a fairly recent thing. Starting in 2012, your Microsoft Xbox Live or your Sony PlayStation Plus included games. The services had existed before then, but they started to add games in as added value, and they've turned them into more about the game since then. They've changed over a bit over those almost 15, remember that number, years since they launched. And both services are now a sort of a Netflix of games, I think, or for people of our age, a blockbuster of games. They seem to be the way that console gaming is going. And even PC gaming has tried that kind of thing going on in time too. Not as successfully, but maybe eventually it will. But on the consoles, they represent something like 20% of the revenue for Xbox and PlayStation. And as I mentioned, roughly 15 years ago is when they started. And if we go back another 15 years before that, something that I knew almost nothing about was stopping. And that's the Sega channel or the Sega channel or the Sega channel. And it was remarkably similar to what we have now. The Sega channel was a subscription-based service, primarily in the USA for the Sega Genesis, which is the North American version of the Mega Drive. It was a partnership with cable TV companies. Although it felt like video games on demand, you tell it which game you wanted to play and it would download it. Kind of wasn't doing that. The cable TV service was just broadcasting all the games one after the other, and your machine would just wait for the right game to come up and download it for you. But it felt like it was on demand. And it was a partnership between Sega and the TV channels to have one channel dedicated to just broadcasting out these games. You paid an upfront amount and you got the adapter for your console, and then you had this subscription-based service. And it did come out in various different countries in the UK, but none were as successful as North America. 250,000 subscribers there. Japan, it was competing with another Sega service called Meganet, which worked by dial-up, and Nintendo had a service too by satellite called Satellaview, which didn't go worldwide. Now, it wasn't a huge success, so let's call it a failure. It was a failure because at the time it launched, I think it was looking down the barrel of CD gaming. It was looking at the PlayStation, Sega's own Saturn, and Dreamcast both used optical discs. And of course, the Mega Drive was getting long in the tooth. So this came out in 1994 and closed in 1998. And of course, Sega themselves stopped doing hardware in 2001. But the reason why we're talking about it today is that Michael Sherrick, the former VP of programming for the Sega channel, collaborated with a guy called Ray, who's known as Sega Channel Guy, and the VGHF, the Video Games History Foundation, to combine Michael's notes and recollections with Ray's backups of the games to recover loads of info about the service, where Sega were considering taking it next. And the most exciting part, games that you've not been able to play since the 90s. And I didn't accept that on face value at first, because I'm always a little bit skeptical of saying, oh, here's a game you've not been able to play, and it turns out, yeah, you could. But no, this is true. There's lots of unique versions of games for the Sega channel, around 100 different games. But there are 6 that were actually unique to it. And you've not been able to play them until now. So there are now 6 games available that were not available unless you had them on the Sega channel up to 1998. So the Flintstones never made it to a physical release. Garfield Caught in the Act. The version on the Sega channel had 3 extra levels. Iron Hammer was supposed to be a VR game for the cancelled headset, but they salvaged it into this game. Waterworld, the SNES got a release, but this was a Sega channel exclusive for the Genesis. And Breakthrough, which is a tile matching game. Again, the SNES got a release, but this was a Sega channel exclusive. And the Berenstein's Bears A School Day, which was a set of educational mini games for the Pico kids tablet that got a port, but only to the Sega channel and not to a cart. Now, I looked at the reviews for these games to find out what you were missing out on, and Garfield did get decent reviews, so there's something there to play. Flintstones got fairly poor reviews. Waterworld, in the same spirit as the film, got terrible reviews. And I can't find reviews for the other three, so I don't think it's fair to say that Mega Drive and Genesis owners have been missing out on the best games on the platforms until now. However, I would point out, as we've covered in previous editions of this show, there's plenty of us that love a game that isn't necessarily the best game around, but we loved it because we played it back in the day. And there will be people that played these 6 games back in the day that now can experience the game finally that have not been able to play for all these years. What do you think, Chris?
Look, it's funny how, and Jason pulled me up on it just then. It's funny how when it's a modern platform pushing a service like this, my response is Danger Will Robinson danger. Although I do take your point, Jason. At one point, we were being charged just for the privilege of being of playing online, and then they added in, how about we throw some games at you? And that does make the deal better.
It's just sour Chris face all around.
Yes, but throw in a story about one of the early attempts at this kind of service, and you can't help but go, because I didn't realize it was this early in the piece that they were having a stab at it. But I do still hate the concept. I prefer ownership over subscription-based services. So I'm sorry, I'm glad it failed. So there.
Jason,
it's fun as sorry?
Are you dismissive of these attempts?
Well, I mean, I think it's a great reminder of just how long hardware vendors have been craving a fully digital direct-to-consumer solution. And and it also frames that what was the key challenge there. It wasn't the technology to do it. They build us a gadget that can receive a game remotely. Okay, boss, that's not hard. The hard part is bandwidth. How do we have enough bandwidth to get it to people, and where do we get that bandwidth from? We talked about the Dreamcast, and the solution there was, let's just slap a modem on every single one. Okay, it's cost reduced enough by that point to do that. Everybody has a phone line. We'll just give them a modem. But this approach was, okay, where can we get a lot of data-friendly bandwidth? Well, all right, we'll go to cable TV operators. They've wired up the homes. We'll offer it through them. They've got billing, that they can bill the customers. We'll split the money with the cable TV operators. That's fine. We'll try it. We'll accept the one-way stream limitations. No big deal. We're not worried about doing net play. We just want to push data down. So interesting as an iteration of the model that, again, once they could, and it's amazing that the retail game stores still have hung on kind of in the face of just how many years all the publishers have been wanting to go direct to consumer, or at least more direct. And yeah, awesome too, like you were documenting, Dave, that we're getting this drop of 6 really truly new to us ROMs, as well as the over 100 ROMs in the package form for the Sega Channel distribution. When obviously this platform is one of the most documented, well documented of the 16-bit period, you'd feel like everything was probably pretty well preserved. But no, these ROMs literally were just lurking on somebody's hard drive. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, but I'm happy that people have the option to subscribe to a modest monthly payment and get lots of games for it. They certainly get lots of value for money if they play, I don't know, 15 hours a week, then you get great value of money from it. But I'm also glad that you can buy a digital game and keep it forever on GOG, which is being sold apparently. Chris?
Something happened today that I think is relevant to this conversation. I was literally gifted an Xbox One, not an OG Xbox, an Xbox One. The reason why? The optical drive has stopped working, and the person that owned it refuses to buy digital games. He only wants to play off disc, and he goes, there you go. You can have it. If you want to use digital, that's fine, but I'm not interested. I've bought another one. So there you go.
Yeah, I miss that there's the option for physical games, because they really have, apart from the Switch, I think, whichever way points out when you mention it, apart from that, and even then, not all Switch games, the idea of buying a game physically on a disc and putting it into your console is gone, because as soon as you do that, it says, right, day one update, 86 gigabytes. That's a shame that's gone, but I just hope, I don't do the subscriptions, I just hope that we can continue to buy games and we don't have to subscribe to a service, because that seems to be, everybody wants to get a subscription for you. But if you are a Sega or a Sega or a Sega fan, fill your boots with something different. There's more to be read about it on the VGHF article, including links to where you can access the games. So thanks to Indigo Prime for submitting that to the subreddit.
It's time now for our community question of the week. And our last community question of the week from last year was, what's the retro news you're hoping to hear in 2026? Hopefully we covered it in this week's episode. You're about to find out, I guess. So
It's a bit ambitious.
Are we out of contest mode, guys?
We are out of
Yes,
contest.
we
Right?
are.
Right. Here we go. Who's first up? Dave?
Robert Crowther. He says, I'm hoping to hear I won the lottery so that I can afford to buy all the retro stuff I want and a bigger house to put it in.
And Valkyrin Xbox said, I would like to see a modern remake of the CPC to complement the C64 Ultimate and Spectrum Next.
Very nice. And now that I'm finally listing the answers in the correct order, Darth Lovejoy says the retro announcement for next year, a This Week in Retro World Tour, so sold out stadiums, town halls, broom cupboards, free biscuits, and a mug of tea will include with the ticket entry. Fantastic! What a great idea. Let's do it.
Shall we all meet down in the cave later on this year? You guys can get a flight in for it.
Be fun.
Far out.
Be fun, says Jason. No,
I
I'm
can't.
not paying for a flight for that.
I can't do it at the start of the year because I've got a mate coming over here, so that wouldn't work. He'd be here, I'd be there, and that would be the wrong way round. Oh, look.
Lots of people asking for minis or maxis remakes, kind of things. The 520 ST, the BBC Micro, the Archimedes.
Talk about narrowcasting.
Free Amigas for everyone.
Who said
was
that? Who said that?
Rowan Forest. A remake of Outrun for the OCS Amiga.
Yeah, more this week.
Yes.
That was
That's Mike
submitted by
C76.
That was Jason.
Was that Jason?
That's my alt.
Is it?
Yeah.
Nice work. Yeah. That
All right,
needs
we
to
got
be
a new
thing.
question. Shall I give them the new question?
Give them the new question, Jason.
Yes, in the spirit of those 6 long-lost Sega Channel games, which platform do you wish you could conjure up 6 long-lost games for? And you would, of course, go to reddit.com/r/thisweekinretro to submit your answer, upvote or downvote other people's answers, all that good stuff.
The GX 4000.
Well, you put your thumb on the scale, Dave, and Duncan will put his thumb on the scale when he posts the question. And through my alt, I'll put my thumb on the scale as well. Chris refuses to downvote
Burning
anything.
rubber,
We know
says
that.
Jason.
I'm not subscribing to this.
GX 4000. Thank you for joining us this
We
week.
did it.
Welcome back to Welcome back to This Week in Retro for 2026. We will have some guests soon. Lots of things happening. We hope this year will be as fun as last. And we'll see you next week.
Bye. We're waving again.
Thanks for sticking with us.
Everybody's waving.
I'm waving. Jason's waving. Chris is waving.
I always wave.
This Week in Retro was written and presented by Chris from 005 AGIMA, Jason from the Retro Adventurers, and Dave. It was edited by me, Duncan Styles. The podcast version of the show is available through your favourite podcast app, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And the video version is available on the This Week in Retro YouTube channel.
Join our community subreddit at r/thisweekinretro to suggest and vote on the stories we cover on the show. Please give us a like and subscribe to help us reach new viewers.
If you enjoy our show and would like to support it, then please check out the link to our Patreon page in the show notes or description. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time for more up-to-date news for out-of-date tech.